Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This webinar is brought to you by Strategies 2.0, a statewide collaborative funded by the California Office of Child Abuse Prevention. Today's webinar is part of a six-part series. This is session 2 of Are We There Yet? Conversations to Help Navigate Parenting. The webinar is scheduled from 10 until 11:30 this morning. I'm Carrie Collins, today's facilitator, and my role today is to introduce the topic and presenter, keep track of time, help presenters and participants in any way that I can. In a moment, I will introduce Michelle to you, but first I'd like to go over a few of the webinar guidelines. The webinar is an hour and a half, and that will go by really quickly. In order to limit some outside noise, we have muted all participants except for my colleagues, Alma and Shane, and of course our presenter, Michelle. Let me show you a few ways that we will have you interact. So all of you should have a task bar, and you have a little red arrow right there. So you should be able to minimize that task bar, or that task bar will give you a lot of choices of things that you can do. You can either be on your telephone this morning, or you can be on your microphone, I mean your computer microphone and speakers. Sometimes that will give you kind of a distorted sound. So if you click on telephone, it will give you a number and also a code that you need to enter and a PIN number that you need to enter. So, you know, if you decide to switch to telephone, you could go ahead and do that right now. You'll still be able to hear me. We just wouldn't be able to hear you. Oh, Alma just put in the task bar, the chat box, the telephone number and all of the codes that you need. So we do have a chat box. I hope you can see the chat box. This is where we're going to want you to maybe submit any questions or comments that you have. So just to test that out this morning and make sure you can all hear me okay, why don't you go ahead and put into the chat box where you're calling from today. We have South Lake Tahoe. Oh my gosh, Ventura, Sacramento, Selma, more Sacramento. Oh my gosh, Rohnert Park, Selma, San Luis Obispo. So all over the state, Bakersfield. Hi, Bakersfield. We were just there yesterday. Eureka, Huntington Beach. I can't even keep up with you all. This is fantastic. It's so great to have all of you join us, and then this helps me know that you can actually hear me. So thank you so much for doing that. Let's see. There's also a place where you can raise your hand, and there may be a couple of times in this presentation today that we might be asking for a volunteer, or if you wanted to ask a question yourself instead of just putting it into the task, to the chat box, you could actually raise your hand and we can unmute you and have you actually ask your question live on the webinar today. So we'll see if any of you are brave enough to do that today. That's your speakers. Like I said, I have muted you all, so you don't need to worry if there's some background noise going on, because we can't hear that unless we unmute you. So if you haven't already done so, I do encourage you to print out the copies of the journaling pages that you'll find under the materials. If you click on the materials, there are two handouts that we sent to you. We also sent to you these materials via email. So we hope you had a chance to look at them, read them ahead of time. You know, Michelle will be referring to them in the process of today. So it's my pleasure to welcome the presenter for today, Michelle Gordon-Johnson, who is a parent educator and parent coach. She has taught early education and family study courses at the college level for more than 22 years, and she doesn't even look like she's older than 22. Prior to teaching the adult learner, Michelle was an infant, toddler, and preschool teacher. Additionally, Michelle is an experienced parent educator, certified in a variety of parenting programs. For over a decade, Michelle has facilitated parenting groups and provided individual parenting coaching. More recently, using her parenting journal coaching tool that she authored, Are we there yet? Conversations to help navigate parenting. I'm now going to turn over the presenter mode to Michelle for her to take over at this point.
Thanks, Carrie. Much appreciated. So can everyone hear me? Am I coming through? Welcome to all of the participants from all over California. It was fun to watch the various locations that people are calling in from. So today, in terms of the variety of hats that I wear, I'm going to focus on my role as a parent coach. And more specifically, how can we most effectively support and encourage change for the parents that we work with? So that's what we'll explore as a group today. And I have over almost a decade of parent coaching, I have developed a process that I think supports change and really helps parents to apply the concepts that we talk about with our parents: temperament, goodness of fit, guidance strategies, all of sort of the learning that we want to happen. What is a framework that we can utilize so that they can apply that learning? So that's what I focused on in the first webinar, and that's archived in the Strategies webinar library. But I want to just quickly review that process, and then we're going to use that process with two conversations today. So those are the two handouts you have. We're going to explore packing, which is looking at our own childhood and how we were parented, and then a conversation about mapping our route, which is a conversation about matching what we want for our children with what we do. And so the framework or the three-step process looks like this. The first thing we want to do is really to amplify what is good and working already in the family. So I imagine that you all are familiar with family strengthening principles, and start with the strengths, amplify those strengths. And so you'll see that woven into, as I move through the conversations, you'll see that that's the place I start with. And that's where I anchor the parent. The next step that I utilize is to reframe the challenges that the parent is experiencing. So in doing that, I keep in mind two things: that the focus is on the parent making changes themselves. So the parent changes within to see changes with the child. So we talk about, rather than what can I do to change my child, what can I do to change myself so that my interactions with my child will be different, and consequently the outcome will be different. And then also focus on what we can control. So I'll often ask a parent, what about this challenge can you reasonably control? So that's the reframe challenges. And then the third step in this framework is to identify small changes. This is key. I love when we hear if nothing changes, nothing changes. And it's very true. My experience as a parent educator has been that parents show up in classes, they're eager to learn the concepts, they're sort of all in with that learning process, but when it comes to actually taking that home and having things look or feel differently, that's the really difficult piece, but it's essential. We have to move them beyond learning. So not only identifying small changes, but asking ourselves, how can we support this change over time? And how can we hold the parent accountable for the changes that they have identified? And we want to be culturally competent in our work, and we want to recognize that family values mean something different to everyone. Families value different things. Some families value obedience, others self-sufficiency, some resilience, others respect for elders. And so the parents, you'll see, are identifying the changes that they want to make based on their own beliefs and values. Okay, so as I said, we're going to apply the framework to 2 parenting conversations today. You have those handouts. If you read them, great. If not, don't worry about it. We're going to cover key concepts and you can read them later. We are on webinar number 2. There are 6 total, and I will cover 2 parenting conversations with each. So we're going to make it through 10 parenting conversations if you join for the series, which I hope you will. So bringing your attention to a couple of things. In the bottom right-hand corner, those are page numbers. I know that perhaps folks that are listening from San Luis Obispo may have a copy of the journal, may have purchased the journal, and those are page references. No need to have the journal. It is on Amazon, and we'll talk about that, but it's not necessary for today's conversation, and it's not necessary to apply what we're talking about today. It's not journal dependent. So, but I'm just bringing that to your attention. And then here's really the crux of what I've learned as a coach, that parenting information by itself does not bring about positive, sustainable change. So a process is needed to move the learning from sort of the learning a concept. Maybe I'm learning about goodness of fit and how to help have my temperament better match my child's temperament. So how do I go from understanding that, sort of cognitively understanding that as a concept, as an abstract, to actually being able to apply that concept in our own lives? And that's really essential for change. And so what I found as an effective tool to do that is journaling. Journaling can support that shift. So I have built journaling into my framework to help parents to make that move. So let's take a look, see what that looks like. So again, the journal is 10 conversations with parents. Over the course of the webinar, we're going to have 10 conversations. And the reason 10 conversations is, after a decade of parent coaching, I realized I'm having the same 10 conversations over and over and over again. And so those are the ones that I really highlight. So for each coaching session, so I might do an individual coaching session, or I might do a parent support group. So right now I'm doing a parent support group, and we're going through the 10 conversations. And so how do I do that? Again, you don't need the journal to do this work. You don't need the journal to use this process. You can use a variety of resources to access these conversations. So however you want to teach the concept is entirely up to you and will work well. But you can still apply the same process. And so the first thing that you want to do is that parents can read the conversation on their own if you're using the journal, or you can provide a handout to parents with a parenting concept, or in a parenting class you can teach a concept. So you can talk about how our own childhood shows up in our parenting, or you can talk about the co-parenting relationship. So you can talk about these things, they can read about these things, and after the concept has been introduced, again, we need to move them from learning to application. So what I use is the journaling. So parents journal at the end of each reading, and we use those journal exercises, we use their responses to the journal exercises to not only grow their self-awareness, which is key to change, but then to identify small changes. So we're going to see what that looks like momentarily. And so in my own work, I have parents read a conversation on their own. My time with them is really precious. So if I have an hour coaching meeting or if I have an hour support group, I don't want to teach a concept. I want to talk about what that looks like in their lives and perhaps a mismatch that's occurring for them, or what does that look like in terms of change? So I want them to come prepared for the coaching part, for the change part, for the action steps. So I have them independently learn the concept, journal, and then I meet to coach. But again, in whatever format you do, I mean, it can be a 2-hour class, and you can capture all of that in each 2-hour session. Okay. Any questions about the process I use? So I'd love it if folks could raise their hand, and then Elma can unmute you. Love to hear any questions about the process I use. Love to hear if you need the process clarified, or maybe as you're listening and thinking about how coaching could work with the families that you serve, ways you might weave it into your own parent education work or parent coaching work or parent advocacy, family advocacy, case management. So I look forward to perhaps some raised hands and some thoughts on that.
Amanda, go ahead and ask your question.
I was just wondering if this could be modified for maybe parents who have limited ability for reading and writing.
Absolutely. So in terms of limited ability for reading and writing, the journal is, each page is maybe 3 to 4 half pages. And so the reading is really limited. Even as someone who, has an advanced degree in early childhood, I can't tell you how many books are piled, parenting books are piled next to my bed, excellent books, and I fall asleep on page 2 just because I'm exhausted from work schedules when my kids were young. So I really try to keep in mind making it much simpler, making it much shorter. But when there are concerns about literacy levels, I think these concepts can certainly be taught as a conversation. So as you listen to the first conversation packing, think about just using those key points to talk to parents, to say to them, so think about your own childhood and how you were raised. And, what we know is that the practices that happen in our own home will show up when we parent, that we don't necessarily mean to repeat. So we can talk the concepts instead of having them read the concepts. And then the journaling, what I find is I will prepare the parents to journal. So there are perhaps 2 journal questions with each conversation. And again, you can modify them, you can make them your own, you can think of your own journal questions. But I'll say, so with the concept about, or we're learning about how our own childhood shows up in our parenting, think about things that your parents did or maybe said, things like yelling or maybe spanking that you don't want to carry into your own parenting. So I can talk that on a level that is really appropriate for diverse parents, whether that's limited English and I'm a mono-English speaker, or parents who have had fairly severe trauma, parents in recovery, parents with a variety of literacy levels. So hopefully that you see as we go along that this is not literacy dependent. What did that make sense, or questions about that, or did that answer what you were asking me?
Yes. Sorry, thank you.
Okay.
That was a really
you're
great
very
explanation.
welcome. Yay. Any other questions?
I don't see any more raised hands, so
Okay.
Amanda was the only one.
There'll be lots of opportunities, and don't feel like you have to wait for me to say any questions to raise your hand. We can find an appropriate space to do that, and I'm so happy to clarify as we move along. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I am going to, hopefully, here's my intention. I'm going to end this to bring up my other screen because I want to just briefly read to you these 2 pages at the start of the parenting journal. And again, you don't need the journal to do the work, but just to sort of introduce where we're going, I think this is a good start. I had the good fortune to do a road trip with my son from New York to California when he turned 18, and then inspired this journal, and it also just really got me thinking about parenting and how we change as parents, and how to sometimes we just get lost in the muck and the details and the expectations, and we lose sight of the big picture, which really the big picture I hope is that we enjoy parenting much of the time and that we can find it rewarding. So I wrote this, and this is the introduction. It occurred to me on a cross-country road trip from New York to California, traveling with my younger son, that a road trip and the parenting experience have a lot in common. Over 6 days and almost 3,000 miles, there were small moments that were close to perfect, and times when the road trip took a dramatic turn for the worse. These inevitable highs and lows are part of any road trip, and in isolation neither define the trip nor tell the whole story. As parents, we will have moments when we are at our best and occasions when we will genuinely struggle, often both on the same day. These shared experiences, the smooth roads and the sharp turns, become the adventure, challenging us to grow as parents and to appreciate what such moments have to offer. Here are some of the fundamental lessons from a road trip that we can bring to our own parenting. There are multiple routes to any destination. Depending on a number of factors, one of these routes is usually considered a better way to go. We start out road trips full of optimism, which is best coupled with a realistic understanding that we will need to be flexible when things don't go according to plan, later to become some of our favorite stories. It might be helpful to seek out advice from travel experts or those who have already visited the area, recognizing at some point we will reach information overload. There's no need to get too stressed. After all, the idea is to enjoy a road trip as much as possible, creating memories with those you love and embracing the messy adventure that a road trip invites. And lastly, road trips are usually better shared with others who can support you along the way and remind you to slow down and enjoy the scenery. Okay, so let me switch back to our PowerPoint and we will dig in. Okay, so that first conversation, packing. Again, not journal dependent. You can teach, you can print the PowerPoint that becomes available to you after the webinar and actually use this as your teaching guide. So were you to have all the PowerPoints, eventually you'll have the 10 conversations, and that can morph into a guide for a class or guide for coaching sessions, just using those key concepts and those journaling questions. So parents could bring to the sessions a notebook, and you could share with them what that you'd like them to think about, and they could journal. I never want parents to feel like if they haven't come prepared to a coaching session that the time won't be worthwhile or meaningful. We'll talk the journaling, or I'll pause and let them journal for a little bit and then begin the conversation again. So many different ways to do it depending on the parent that you're working with and what their needs are and perhaps what their challenges are. So we're going to do the teach, journal, coach with the packing conversation, and then teach, journal, coach with the mapping our route conversation. And I am going to ask when we get to the coaching part that perhaps if there's someone who would want to raise their hand and we could go through that process, that would be really worthwhile for everyone. Okay, so the key concepts that I want to teach with this conversation in whatever way, the big takeaways are that we need to recognize that our experience being parented is present in our parenting in both helpful and unhelpful ways. I've challenged myself when I wrote the journal and when I talk to parents to try to eliminate the good, bad as much as I can, and ways that serve you, ways that are helpful, ways that aren't helpful, things that get in your way. And I found that to be more effective. So this is a key takeaway. And then Daniel Siegel, if any of you are familiar with Daniel Siegel's work, Parenting from the Inside Out, fantastic book, a lot of information in there. And so here's a 300-page book with a couple of key points. So Daniel Siegel explores how, that one of the biggest predictors of how we will do as parents is the degree to which we are willing to make sense of our own growing up years. He uses a term, coherent narrative, that I love. It really, so we need to create a coherent narrative about our own childhood. And that process can help us to heal if there was trauma, help us to move forward, help us to be intentional in our own parenting. And so we need to sort out our own feelings about our experiences in order to be the best parent that we can be. So those are the key points that I want to teach to start out. It's a great starting place. I distinguish between being a parent, coach, and therapist in that if the hurt and the pain is deep and it's getting in the way of us talking about change and moving forward, I will always say to the parent, I really hear and feel your pain, and perhaps talking with a therapist or someone that you can, a clergy member, a therapist, someone that you can explore your childhood years with, I think would be really helpful. In these conversations, we're going to pull out some of your experiences, and we're going to talk about change, but we're not going to do a lot of healing work. So if that's something you need, I really encourage that you find someone who can provide that for you. So we really have to start with childhood because it's almost the elephant in the room if we don't. However, we can't get stuck there in someone's pain. We have to acknowledge it, fully recognize it, and then give them resources of how they can work through it if that's something that can need to happen. So whether we've had a conversation about these key points or they've read the journaling pages, there's just 2 or 3 pages, you've got a sense of sort of they were fairly brief. Whether they've read, we talked, I've given them a handout perhaps, they've read something from Daniel Siegel's work. However I have taught this concept, I then want to begin shift to application. So to start shifting to application, I'll ask questions like, so what, for you, when you read the packing conversation, what stood out for you? Maybe even jumped off the page, or perhaps you highlighted. What felt meaningful for you? What felt true? And so I want to get their emotional reaction to the packing conversation, not a discussion, that's on the sort of a cerebral level, but really what emotionally, how did that packing conversation sit with you? And I find always that there is a strong reaction, not just for parents that had a challenging childhood, but others, just memories that come up. So I find there's a lot really that parents can connect with. So that's the teaching element. And then again, we're moving from learning to application. And so the tool that I use is journaling. And these questions may be some questions you want to use, questions you want to modify, absolutely up to you. And so the first question I ask is, what are the parent behaviors or feelings or beliefs from childhood you don't want to carry anymore? And then I give some examples. Maybe there was yelling in your home, or you felt scared, or you didn't feel lovable. What, and I also provide lots of examples on the pages that you're welcome to use in your work. And so I want to really illustrate with specific examples what I'm asking. And so what I'd love for participants on the webinar today to do is just to go ahead and type into the chat box words that come up for you. And Alma will read those for the group, and that would be really helpful. So if everyone could just take a moment, if you're comfortable doing that and that feels safe, to type in some words that come, things you don't want to carry anymore in your parenting. Perhaps you're a parent now, or sort of hypothetically in the future, just your interactions with other people or intimate partners. So think about
Uncertainty, yelling, another one yelling, feeling of abandonment, isolation, not being enough or not being enough, lack of family nurturing time, yelling, belittling, sadness and darkness, silence, that my opinions were important. So feeling like the opinions were not important.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate that you shared. And to see with just that question how much comes up. So with the parents, I want to not only recognize the feelings, I want to explore it a little bit more. So let's take yelling. I might say to a parent, can you share with me something that you journaled that you don't want to carry anymore? And so they might say yelling. There was a lot of yelling in my family. Can you tell me more about that, or what did that look like? Maybe in describing what it looked like yelling between mom and dad, or maybe it looked like mom yelling at the children. So I want to get more of an idea of what did that look like, and I may even follow up with, and how did that feel for you?
Michelle,
So,
I got one more here, and it was sent privately. It says lack of family relationship, bonding, or meaningful quality time together.
okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for continuing to share. So I want to take that question. So their journal is private. And I say at the start, I'm not going to ask to see your journal. Your journal is private. Your journal is a place to put down your feelings without, having to think about it. I'll ask you to share, and that's entirely up to you, especially if it's in a group. So I'm doing a parenting group right now, and I'll start with that first question, and I'll say, who would like to share? Not everyone chooses to share, and that's fine. Their example someone else might have shared, but they see me go through the process, and I believe that they themselves are then doing it, internally. They're going through, the being scared. I'm recognizing it. I'm saying, tell me what that looked like, and getting more information. Okay, so that's the first journaling question of the two. The second question, and again, we really want to recognize also what's good and working. And so I'll ask parent behaviors, feelings, and beliefs from childhood you want to keep and bring to your parenting. Again, I want to make it really concrete. I want to provide examples. What does that mean? So I will repeat things like, so parent behaviors like feeling loved. I know my parents, every time we left a room, or left the house, they'd say, I love you, see you later. Or maybe feelings that you had, feeling safe, or beliefs in a higher power. All of what would you want to keep and bring to your own parenting? So if you would take the opportunity again to do exactly what you did last time, that was perfect. And I like that you didn't take me literally one word, just the spirit of one word, and that was perfect. And if you can type into the chat box, please, and I'll read that. Parent behaviors, feelings, and beliefs in childhood you want to keep and bring to your parenting.
Support, exploration, structure, freedom, understanding, respect, quality time, morals, expression of gratitude, values, empowerment, value, stability, love, honesty, life skills.
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit, and then if more pop up, we can read them as well. A couple notes I want to make. I see boundaries up there. Popped up. Thanks. Parents of teens. So if I'm working with a group of parents of teens, I want to, or individually coaching a parent of a teen, I want them to focus on those questions during their teen years. I think our memories, sometimes, not always, but our memories of our teen years can be quite different than our memories of earlier, of school years. So I will specifically say to them, you have a teenager, so I'd love for you to focus on your teen years. So perhaps during their teen years, they felt alone, or they felt criticized, or perhaps things that they wanted to keep. They felt heard, or they felt valued. So I think it's much more helpful to really get them in that mind space of the adolescent years. So just a note there. Thinking about the current group I'm working with, 2 examples. I had a mom with, we haven't explored it at length. She's just alluded to it on several occasions, that she had a very difficult childhood. She has mentioned there was substance use. It sounds like there might have been some domestic violence, a lot of anger, and you can feel the pain when she talks about it. Again, I'm not going to go deeply into that pain. I believe she has worked with someone, with a therapist, but again, I might chat with her as an aside without the group and ask that. But I love that she had this great memory. Well, she said, I want to soften my memories about childhood. And she was excited about this question because she said, this seems like a good start to doing that. So I remember my dad, he always did this bedtime prayer with us. And she shared the prayer. She said, I think I want to start doing that with my kids. And her kids are probably a toddler and a 3-year-old. And not only was it a great opportunity to really value something her dad, a gift her dad had given her, so I could value what her dad had done with her as a child. But I could also, it was a great opportunity to talk about how routine and ritual are a huge protective factor for families. So sometimes in these answers that people in my group or my clients, they'll say something that's like, wow, this is a really great opportunity to talk about a protective factor like routine and ritual, or connecting with resources or a guidance strategy. So there's a lot of teachable moments in the answers to the journaling. And so that was something she wanted to carry with her. And you're going to see when I have, the third step is change. And so I am going to go back to that mom. First of all, I'm going to ask her, how she's going to sort of put that into her own parenting. She's going to do it a bedtime routine with her children. I'm then going to continue to check back with her at each subsequent meeting. So we'll talk more about that. I also had a mom in this group in terms of what she didn't want to carry anymore. Her dad, would always say no without an explanation. So I asked, what did that look like? Tell me more. He'd say things like, no, this is my home, or, all those sort of lines that we hear. And that she wanted to give her daughter an explanation and didn't want to just say no. So I said, do you have an example, or can you think of when you've given an explanation? And so she shared a couple days before her daughter asked something, and at first, she just said no, and then she said, wait, I want to give an explanation. She provided more information for her daughter, and she said, you can't believe what changed for my daughter. She was really glad that I explained it, and it was so much nicer to do that. I think that's a great example of we change the parent to see changes in the child. So that's our focus, things that we can control. I can control whether I say no, just no, or whether I say no with an explanation. I'm fully in control of that. That's something about myself I'm going to change. So I got a sense of what that looked like in our home, and then I said to her, so providing an explanation, what do you think that will give your daughter over time? How do you think that will contribute to her development? And that was a really good conversation, not only about sort of language skills for her daughter, but her daughter perhaps having more of an internal locus of control. So we didn't use that word in the conversation. So those are a couple of examples. Alma, did I miss anyone in the chat box who had something more they wanted to say?
Let me see. I think I skipped one because they were coming at me too fast. Let me see.
Okay. Well, when you're looking through that.
Fear was one of them that I think I didn't read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's now go to, I taught the concept to the parents I work with. I had the parents journal about the concept. And then we shared out, what does that look like in your own home? So I'm moving from learning to application, and now I'm going to really ground that application. So I am going to, do you remember, also the sort of review of webinar 1, I said I created a framework for my coaching. So now I'm going to apply that framework that I developed for my coaching. I have a fascination with frameworks, you might be able to tell. So the first thing I want to do is I want to amplify what's good and working. Family strengthening principles. I want to amplify what's good and working. So how do I do that with the packing conversation? I ask the question, in what ways does what you want to bring with you show up in your parenting? Or, and we'll talk about sort of as we move forward, how can we sort of bring more of that? So is there a volunteer who Alma could unmute, you could raise your hand, and I want to go through this 3-step process, amplify, reframe, and identify a small change. So if anyone's game for doing that, would love it if you're currently a parent. If you are a parent, then it just makes it a little bit easier to have a parenting conversation. So Any volunteers? I promise to make it safe. It will really bring value for everyone.
Oh, I
There
see
we go.
one volunteer.
Yay!
Crystal Hardy,
Yay!
I'm going to mute you. Go ahead, Crystal.
Hi, Crystal. Are you there?
Oh, I had to unmute myself as well.
Okay. Crystal, is that correct?
Crystal,
Hello?
go ahead.
Okay. So, Crystal, are you there with me?
Yes, I
I don't know if she can hear us.
Been a lot of noise.
Hello.
Can we have another
Girl, are you?
volunteer?
Oh, is everyone unmuted, perhaps?
Yeah, everyone's
Denise
unmuted.
offered that. Oh, just you can't hear me. Okay, let's see if we can just get Crystal unmuted. Okay. So, Crystal, let's try again. It sounds like you responded, but you're right, I didn't hear you. So those, what you're typing in the chat box is very helpful. Okay, so let's try again, Crystal. In what ways does what you want to bring with you show up in your own parenting?
So I'm going to unmute just Crystal because there's a lot of background noise. So give me 1 second. Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Eureka. Okay, so I'm a lot more patient and mindful when having conversations with my children, and I'm always asking them what they think or how they feel. What do you think we should do? How do you feel about this? So, yeah, that's how it shows up. Hello?
Michelle?
I wonder if she's muted now.
Michelle, go ahead.
Okay. Crystal, specifically in what ways does what you want to bring with you, what you identified in your journaling, show up in your current parenting?
I'm more patient and mindful of how my children feel and that they're involved in the process. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you now. Thank you so much. So tell me something that your parents or parent, perhaps one of their behaviors or a belief that they had or something that occurred in your own childhood that you would like to carry forward in your parenting.
I would say, I think it was life skills someone mentioned, but the training of how to clean and cook and take care of yourself, and being helpful to others and expressing, love to others. I think that's one thing I'm definitely, or those are a few things I would like to carry into my.
Nice. So let's sort of think about one of those. You said life skills. Did your parents have you actively participate in sort of the cooking and cleaning when you were growing up, or what did that look like, Crystal, in your house growing up?
Yes, definitely. I was the only girl, so I was I was not pleased with the way they categorized how girls had to do all the cooking and cleaning and the boys were just, manual workers. So that part I'm not gonna take, but we had assigned chores and time that we had to do it. So from dishes to sweeping and mopping to trash was all me, and then I would assist with cooking on the weekends.
Nice. So you did chores and you helped with cooking. I bet you got a lot of skills. So how old are your children now?
I have a 13, 7, and a 2.5.
Wow, nice. And with your own children, how have you brought the value of doing chores, the value of learning cooking into your own parenting? How is that showing up in your parenting right now?
We have a chore chart, and has their assigned chores, and we rotate. So the
Uh-huh.
7-year-old is now starting to help with dishes duty, but he was
Mm-hmm.
more responsible for helping to tidy up the living room, wipe the table, and throw out the trash. So now his
Uh-huh.
chores are, we're trying to rotate it around where everybody gets a little bit, they help with everything at some point.
Well, that's fantastic, Crystal. Families really are challenged with having children do chores. And, it's not easy, and I really commend you for that. It has so much value. And so I want to connect that. So, you did chores growing up, and you're now bringing that to your own family. If you think about in the future when your children are 18, 20s, etc., what kind of skills or life skills, you use the word life skills, or qualities do you think they'll have because you had them do chores?
We talk about this all the time because sometimes I get the grumble, oh, I have to do it.
Yeah.
I tell them in life, you'll be able to take care of yourself. You'll be responsible and accountable for what you have to handle. Your house will not be a mess. You will not be in chaos and disarray. So you'll have that the skill of just a personal responsibility and know-how. I guess I don't know if I have another word to describe that.
That's great, and people will want to live with them.
Yeah.
Not only will they be self-sufficient, personally responsible, they'll be more successful with roommates and intimate partners.
Oh
I
yeah.
love that. Okay, so good, and that's such a gift that your parents gave you. It really is. So hang with me, Crystal. We're going to go to the next question. So,
We have another
um,
hand raised, Michelle. I don't know, you want to
I'm
take the time right now or?
What I'd love to do is perhaps have you jot down the name of that individual, and with our next we can start the process over,
Okay,
or just they can keep their hand raised, and let's start the process from the
okay,
beginning again with that person. So we'll go through the 3 steps with Crystal, and then we'll do it with the other individual. How's that sound?
okay.
Okay, so Crystal, in terms of reframing challenges, so what I want to do with parents with this conversation is we're talking about what they want to no longer carry, but I really like to think in terms of what do you want more of, or what are you going toward rather than what are you going away from. And so more of a positive uh, reframing of what's challenging them. So sometimes I'll ask, what steps have you taken to no longer carry, and here are some examples, yelling, fear of anger, into your own parenting? So Crystal, I'm going to ask you, when you journaled about your own, how you were parented, you went through those 2 journal questions. Is there something that you feel comfortable sharing that you put down that you don't want to carry anymore?
I'll say the yelling.
Yelling? Can you tell us a little bit about what that looked like in your family?
Oh man, it would be something small like I forgot to do the dishes at my assigned time or clean my room, and it'll just go from 0 to 100, just loud. What are you doing? Why?
Was that dad, mom, someone else? Who
Mom,
did most of the yelling? Mom?
mom, yelling
Okay. And do you recall how you felt when your mom was yelling?
and shut down.
Mhm.
Like I used
Mhm.
to say, it just told me in like a normal tone. You didn't have to yell at me.
Right. And you would have listened yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, thank you so much for sharing that. I really, I appreciate that. And we're going to hang on to those 2 questions. And now we're going to this is where all the work happens. So I taught a concept, and I had the parents journal, and we processed and shared out to get truly to this place. And that's that the parent commits to a small change, an action step. And as a coach, I hold them accountable for that change. We make a plan, and I follow up at each subsequent meeting. You know, I can meet with parents for weeks and months, and if they don't commit to small changes, we'll be in the exact same place, you know, still talking about their challenges. So something has to change, and I find that that these conversations become a vehicle to identify small changes. So, Crystal, thanks for hanging with me when I explain that. I love that you have really carried forward the chores in your parenting, and it sounds like you're really able to articulate to your kids, you know, long-term qualities, why it's good for them. And there is a fantastic TED Talk, and actually the admissions officer at Stanford says if she could tell parents anything to help, you know, everyone's always asking her, how does my child get into Stanford? You know, how do they, you know, what's the secret to success? And she says, chores. That's it. That's the secret to success. So you can show your kids that TED Talk when you're a teenager. And I also really appreciate that you identified yelling as something that, you know, really hurt in your own childhood. So I want to ask you, you know, we're going to wrap up this conversation now, and I want to ask you, is yelling something that you've been able to change with your own parenting, or do you find that sometimes when you're tired or frustrated? I know I find with my own parenting that, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I've turned into my mother. I sound like my mother. My mother used to say my stomach is churning, and those words just came out of my mouth. So how are some of those patterns? Are they presenting in your parenting life now, or what's going on for you?
Yes, most definitely. Yelling has been a challenge for me, and I realize it's because I was either overwhelmed, stressed, or I had repeated something over and over and they weren't listening. Um, so I was
Okay.
mindful and remember that, okay, when I get home, before I even go through the door, I sit in the car for about 10, 15 minutes just to breathe and get
Mhm.
centered. And like, okay, I'm about to step in, have a smile on your face. You've missed these children all day. Show them that you care. So I have to do some self-talk affirmations in my head before I even step.
Nice.
Yeah. And if I do yell, I apologize immediately. I'm so sorry I didn't mean to, and I tell them I'm something on my mind or whatever it is. I've explained this 3 times to you, you weren't listening, and I just yell to get your attention. So I usually talk through when I do have a slip up. I
Okay.
acknowledge
Nice.
it, have a
Do
conversation.
you feel like that's something, yelling is something you want to continue to focus on? And I would make a couple of suggestions about sort of more intention that you can bring to that, or is there something else that you feel like is presenting from your childhood that you haven't addressed at all?
No, let's talk about the yelling, please. Help.
Okay, so I'm hearing the transition is that from work to home?
Yes.
Okay, and that's I'm a slow to warm temperament, so I get challenges with transitions, and so you find, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have to just agree. It's when you come home from work, you walk in the door, and there may be a mess, there may be chaos, there may be chores undone, and that's when you find you're challenged.
Yes.
Okay, nice. I mean, so this is fairly concrete. I think we can certainly address this. And so it sounds like you find that if you're able to take some deep breaths before you get into your house, that it helps a lot. Yeah?
It does.
Okay, perfect. So I worked with a mom who had a similar challenge, and she worked out a system that before she got out of her car, she was still safe in her car. There wasn't chaos. She had on her phone an app for guided meditation, and she did a 3-minute guided meditation. She found it was even better if she did it before she arrived in her driveway or her garage. She had the good fortune of living somewhere beautiful, and on her way home was a park. And she pulled over and did a 3 to 5 minute guided meditation with breathing. And she said that was a huge change for her, that she had the capacity. I also, your kids are old enough. I know I've worked with parents who will send out a group text 30 minutes before they get home. Mom's coming home. This is what I need before I get home. So I need the house straightened, or I need chores done, or an hour ahead. That might need to be combined with the deep breathing meditation, short guided. Anything about that, or does that bring up anything for you? Any change that you can think of that you'd like to try out? I'm going to see you next week in group, and I'm wondering if you would be willing. Let's see, your work days Monday through Friday, I assume, yes?
Yes.
Would you be willing to try something I suggested, or perhaps something that came to mind when we were talking? Would you be willing to try that until we meet again next week?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, what would you like to try, Crystal?
Both the guided meditation and texting and calling before I even leave the office to let them know I'm on my way. I like that a lot.
Okay, so Crystal, what time do you get home usually?
6:30.
What time?
6:30.
Okay, so sounds like, what time will you text the kids?
5:30.
5:30. So what I'm hearing is you're going to text your kids at 5:30, a group text.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you might want to tell them things are going to change a little bit around here. I'm going to be sending out this group text. Look for it. Not getting it is not an excuse. So sounds like you're going to do that, and then you're going to do the guided meditation in your car?
Yes.
Perfect. And I have a couple of apps I could suggest. Would you like me to suggest one to you, or do you? Is that something you can want to find on your own? How can I support you in having a short guided meditation?
Yes, please share the app that you have in mind.
Great. I promise to do that, Crystal, not just hypothetically, because you're you're demonstrating the process. I promise to do that in reality, and I'll do that later in the conversation for everyone. And then, so Crystal, are you going to, at what point, not when you're driving, obviously, are you going to do that before you leave the office? Are you going to pull over somewhere gorgeous every day, the same place every day, so you don't have to think about it? Or are you going to do that in your driveway when you pull up?
Not in the driveway, probably right around the corner, like right before I turn into the street, because they also see me pull up, and then everyone's outside, come in. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna right down the street before I pull up to the house.
Perfect. And so, Crystal, a couple of things, and so you're visualizing a specific spot.
Yes.
Okay, great. And keep in mind, this mantra always helped me when my 2-year-old was tantruming. I can't control how he acts, only how I react. And so what we're going to focus on, and what we'll talk about next week when we meet, is that what we're doing is building the capacity for you to react in a way that more closely matches how you want to react. We're just trying to get you closer, because you expressed that you wanted to react with more calmness. Yeah. So we're helping you to get the capacity for calmness. We can't control whether your children choose to act on that text or if they choose to get everything done. We can only work on, or you can only work on, your capacity to react in a way that better matches how you want to react. And so you may walk in and it still may look like it looked last week, but I hope that you will grow the capacity over time to, with more calmness, say, I need the chores done now. Expectations won't change. Your capacity will change. So thank you so much, Crystal. I really appreciate your time, and I promise to get you that meditation information.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very so valuable.
Okay,
I appreciate
Alma, I'm going to hold off on that volunteer until our next
Okay.
conversation
Okay.
because I'm looking at the time and I want to make sure we have enough time.
Okay, great.
Okay, so let's go to our next conversation, and that's mapping our route. So same process with this conversation, same process with all 10 conversations. And I find that predictable routine makes participants feel safe. They know what to expect. They know what we're doing. They know what happens when they show up in coaching. They know what happens when they show up in group. They don't have to worry about that. They can focus on what's important, and that's those small changes. So with this, I want to teach. Note that's a destination bullet in the right corner. So we're creating a parenting map that's going to serve us for all the other conversations. I'm going to refer back to this parenting map all the time. So we want to teach that when we identify the positive qualities we value and want our children to have, we create a parenting map to follow. So we're literally, as a group or an individual, we are going to identify positive qualities we value. Kindness, and in this you can really see diverse values. So I might hear kindness. I might also hear obedience. Not my parenting value, but certainly of value, and one I can support that parent achieving. Resilience, respect for elders. So they're coming from the parent's own belief system, how they want to parent. And then, really critical piece, we need to align what we do, our behaviors, with what we want, those value qualities, so that we positively impact our children's future in lasting ways. So I'll talk to parents a lot. Are your behaviors, choices, and expectations matching what you want? So I came across this Dear Abby. I'm a huge Dear Abby reader. My mom, actually, she gets a hard copy of the paper. I do another paper online, and she cuts out every day all the Dear Abby. She gives a stack of them to me. They make incredible bathroom reading. So I ran across this Dear Abby, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so perfect. So Dear Abby, recently my friends threw me a birthday party. A number of them brought their children ages 2 to 6 to the event. When I began opening my gifts, several of the children started throwing tantrums because they were not being given gifts. I thought this might be a good learning opportunity to gently teach the children that it was not their birthday, but someone else's special day. However, some of the parents began insisting that I let the crying, and by this point screaming, children open my gifts. So she goes on to explain sort of what happened after that. Not good. This is a fantastic example of sort of this conversation. So, and so here's an example. I'm going to actually hang on to it, and I'm going to bring it to my parenting group. I also have a lot of examples in my journal, and I find that the parents, I work with really diverse parents. They're in lots of different situations, different socioeconomic levels, different family structure. They tend to really relate to the examples I provide, which is so exciting for me. I just, really gratifying. I was working with a single mom in recovery. She's actually the first parent I went through the journal with after I had published it. And the single mom in recovery said to me, oh my gosh, I feel like you wrote this journal for me. These examples are crazy me. I know you didn't because you didn't know me before you wrote it, but I feel like it's written for me. So finding examples that parents can relate to, diverse parents, is so critical in our coaching work. Okay, so I want to teach those concepts. Then we go to the journaling. So I ask the parents in each destination point, write a valued quality that you want your children to develop. So let's go through that same process, please, Alma, again, and have people thinking about their children when they're young adults. So I'm thinking my boys are 19 and 22 now. What qualities do I hope they have because of how I parented? What am I hoping for? Or what did I hope for, and did it come to fruition? So go ahead and type in one word or the spirit of one word into that chat box, please.
Kindness, critical thinking, respect, financially responsible, independence, empathy, personal responsibility, mindfulness, forgiveness, gratefulness, honest, integrity.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next point. That doesn't mean it's too late. It's not too late to type in. Oh, there we go.
Self-care.
Okay, so I'll have you keep participating in this chat box.
Self-respect.
Beautiful. So what we're going to do next, so that in my journaling, and again, you don't need the journal. They can have a journal from CVS. You would ask them to write down the valued qualities that you want your children to develop. So they might just be writing a list on a piece of paper. And so then in the journal that I created and the one that you have in front of you, there's a road. And so I say on each road related to, so if you had kindness in a destination point to the right, on that road leading to the point, you would want to write the parenting behavior, choice, or expectation that will support the valued quality, that will support kindness. So next to the road, right, leading to kindness, I want to write that I am kind to my children in the following ways. You know, I want to be really specific, not abstract, really specific.
I'm sharing one that it was sent privately. Outstanding qualities shared.
So what you'll do in the chat box now is you can share a short sentence of how you support that quality. And as you're thinking, I'm just going to tell a quick story. I don't know if the two are compatible, me telling a story and participants thinking, but I'm going to try it. I was hiking the other day on Bishop's Peak near my house, and there were these probably 4 10-year-old boys on the hiking trail. And trailing behind was dad, and trailing more behind was mom, or who I'm assuming to be mom and dad. These boys were having a great time. And I heard the mom yell to the dad, tell them to not run ahead and tell them that they need to stay with us at all times. So mom said that to dad, dad said that to the boys. I was hiking a little bit faster than the group, and I passed the boys and saw they were doing a great job hiking. They were motivated, they were having fun, and it gave me sort of an opportunity to pause and think. You know, I'm wondering what qualities the parents really value for, I don't know if all 4 boys were theirs or 2 were theirs, but I do know in parent groups, I hear this word resilience a lot. I want my children to be resilient. So as I'm sort of daydreaming and hiking, I'm thinking, I'm wondering if their choice and their expectation to have the boys always stay right with them matches the quality that's important to them that they're trying to instill, resilience. Resilience is dealing with uncertainty, taking risks. We believe that the lack of resiliency is why our college students are really struggling these days, that they're not used to dealing with uncertainty because mom's only one text away, and they're not used to taking risks because everything's sort of mapped out for them. So, this isn't at all a criticism of the choice that those parents made on that particular day. It is a self-awareness about when we say that we want our children to be resilient or kind or anything else for that matter, do our choices, our expectations, and our behaviors support or match those qualities? So I don't disagree that the boys should certainly have stayed together. That's a good, safe plan. I also know that Bishop's Peak is a pretty small little mountain, and it was 9 a.m, so if they got lost, there was plenty of time for them to be found. The hiking trail is full of Cal Poly students. The trails are clearly mapped out, so I thought, also seems like a pretty safe situation for them to deal with uncertainty and take risks, for them to grow resiliency. It's those kinds of conversations I want to have with the parents I work with, and I want them to develop self-awareness around them. I don't want to tell them, nor is it of any value for me to tell them you should do this or that. I want them to think about when they make a parenting choice or have an expectation, it may or may not support their long-term goals. So I think a couple comments got up there. And so, Alma, can you share some other examples, perhaps, of what participants shared?
Yeah, cultural humility, lead by example, incorporate activities that build or strengthen these qualities. And then there's another one. I work with my kids in social skills and show them love, and they can do anything just in a different way. They have disabilities.
Okay, fantastic. Great answers. And so if I were coaching with those answers, I would say, what does that look like in your house? Can you give me a specific example? Again, I want to move from abstract. So I lead by example is that's a really important thing to do. So I'd say that's fantastic that you lead by example. Tell me something that you've done that's leading by example. Let's get really specific. Well, I want my children to not be obsessed with their phone. So when I get home from work, we have this basket on the counter, and I park my own phone, and we sit down and talk about how our day was, and all of us have our phone parked. Great example of how your behavior is matching your value. Perfect. Mm-hmm. So I want to get really specific with the parents' responses. Okay, before I move on, Alma, any others pop up?
Let me see. Okay, one here. I read that one already. Cultural humility, lead by example, incorporate activities that build. Yeah, I read that one as well. I think I read them.
Okay, perfect. So, and I see disciplining without anger popped up as well. So these are all great, and so just good starting points. So when I'm talking with parents, I would say, so tell me about disciplining without anger. What does that look like? What do you do instead? What qualities do you think that supports? Well, it supports, effective communication. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here's my coaching piece I bring in, again, going through these 3 steps. I want to amplify what's good and working. And so I have a question that I've been told is pretty powerful when parents think about it. Is that volunteer that volunteered the first time still willing to volunteer? And we'll go through this rather quickly, but really go through it. Are they still around? Or is there someone else who would like to volunteer? Is there a hand that we could raise? And there we go.
Let me see. I don't see the hand. Okay, I think I'm passing it way too fast. Camille Johnson, I'm going to mute you. Go ahead.
Hi, Camille. Hello.
You're self-muted. You need to unmute yourself.
Let me know when you can hear, when you're able
I
to
think
reply, Camille.
I think she's still, yeah, she's unmuted now.
Okay. Camille? Hello, Camille?
She's on her computer sound. She might not have a way to speak into the computer
Camille,
speakers.
right. If you want to type into your chat box, or we could get another volunteer if the sound's too difficult. Okay, so she's on her computer. I wonder if someone on their phone might be an easier, with our few minutes together. Is there someone on their phone that, thanks, Camille, I try to serve others, nice. Is there someone on their phone I could go through the coaching process with? There's a hand.
I think someone raised their hand. Let me see here. Laura, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi, Laura.
Laura, you need to unmute yourself.
There we go. Is it
Yes.
got me?
Love
Yes.
it. Okay,
Yes.
Laura.
You there?
So Laura, hi Laura.
Hi.
I'm assuming you have
Hello.
a list of qualities that you wish for your children. True?
Yes, I have
Okay.
2 adult special needs children.
Okay, great. So Laura, can you?
Go ahead.
And so, looking at that list, Laura, can you tell us how you live the qualities, you yourself live the qualities you identified for your children? How do you live those? Maybe pick 1 or 2 as an example.
Well, one of them is self-respect. And
okay. How do you live self-respect,
when I was
Laura?
Well, when I was their age, it was really bad for me because I was even suicidal. So one of the ways I do is I never give up. I'm also disabled now. One of the ways I live is I never give up. I keep pushing myself.
Okay,
and
so Laura, Laura, I'm going to hone in on that. And so give me an example, Laura, of a recent time that your children saw you not give up. So what I'm hearing is the quality of perseverance. That's what I'm hearing. You really value perseverance, and so your children are seeing you not give up. Is there a time that you can share with us just briefly, a time you haven't given up that your children have witnessed?
A big one that they would count is a recent, what they would mostly see as a recent breakup in a relationship. I have the worst luck with men that they've had to deal with, and the last one left. The last one left me when I had cancer surgery, and I was recovering from a cancer surgery, and he just up and left. He was a truck driver, and he never came back.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that, and I'm sorry to hear that. What did your children see? If you could just tell us briefly what they saw, and then I'm going to switch to the next bullet point because I'm looking at the clock. What did your children see?
Mother never shed a tear. I never shed a tear. In front of them anyway. I never cried in front of them. I basically stayed strong. I sat there with them and told them that he just wasn't good enough for us.
Okay. So that's perfect.
My son took it hard.
Yeah. So
I'm going to wrap up.
Yeah, I'm going to wrap up there just for the sake of time, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us, Laura. So, yes, so you model for your children the qualities that you want to support in their development. I heard in that resilience. I heard in that, sort of drying your tears and moving on. And so you really showed them. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you volunteering, and I'm going to wrap it up now. So what we want to do in the next step, so we amplified what's good and working, and now we're going to reframe challenges. We're going to look at, as a group or with my individual coaching client, where there's a mismatch between the quality that I want and what I do. So say, for example, I was coaching the Dear Abby parent, and that parent had said, that they wanted their child to be able to share, that they wanted their child to recognize the needs of others. There's that mismatch, because while on one hand we want our children to recognize that others have rights, that my expectations weren't that my child be a spectator when the gifts were opened, but that they were a participant. So a great opportunity to talk about that mismatch and how can we better align what we do with what we want. And so I'll say that to parents over and over. How do you align what you do with what you want? And then lastly, again, identify a small change. And so what change can you make? What shift can you make to better align what you want, that quality you want, with what you do? So if you want your children to be more resilient, where can you allow them to deal with uncertainty? Where can you allow some risk-taking within safe parameters? Okay, so hopefully that gave you a sense of where we can go with those conversations, and how you could weave them into your family strengthening work. Okay, I saw I can't hear, and I hopefully have remedied that. So let's end on this. Time goes quickly. I wish there was time for questions. I can stick around. I don't know, sort of the rules as far as that goes, but a couple of options. There's the visual of the journals that I wrote. Our next session is February 16th at 10 a.m. There is the website where you can contact me, my phone number where you can contact me, and I can provide that meditation app. Just give me a call. And then a link for parenting journals, find on Amazon. And then I think Carrie has some wrap-up things with, 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left. Okay, thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to hearing from you. Don't hesitate to call or touch base or email me, and hopefully you'll join us for our next conversation.
Yes, I am. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I had to switch to computer audio. For some reason, I'm having some problems with my phone, so I'm hoping you can all hear me. Just thank you so much, Michelle, for this really rich webinar that you gave today. And thank you to all of the participants that were willing to share some really deep thinking and deep thoughts and personal experiences that you've had. It makes it so much better for all of us that when you're willing to do that. So I do want to remind you that session 2 weeks from today at 10 o'clock, the evaluation will be sent to you immediately following this webinar, as well as Alma will be sending all of you a copy of the PowerPoint. And I will also have her resend the copy of the 2 handouts, just in case you didn't get that the first time around. So thank you all for your participation today, and hopefully we will
see you via the webinar 2 weeks from now. Thank you so much, Michelle.